week to go until Election Day. I'm here with the Democratic candidate for mayor, Roberto Alves. Roberto, good to see you here. How's everything going?
Things are going great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for doing this interview. We are a week out, so every minute counts right now. We're going 900 miles an hour in every direction, but we love it. We have a great team behind us, campaign manager, a great staff. We built a real solid team and an even better ticket. I think we've built one of the best Democratic tickets in decades. People are telling us that. We're excited about the representation it has throughout the city, and the messages. The message has been really resonating with the voters. So just excited.
All right, now look, this is your second time at the Apple here. Last time we were at this very spot 2 years ago, and it was a very close election. And it was a close election for the top of the slate, not so well for the bottom of the slate. Democrats lost on the zoning board, lost the Board of Education, and wound up in minority representation in both those positions. What have you learned from that race 2 years ago? What difficulties, where do you see were the drawbacks from 2 years ago, and how did you try to improve it on this time around?
I think, listen, I felt I was a good candidate then. I feel like I'm an even better candidate now. But at the end of the day, it was no secret to anybody. Danbury politics, and with such a low turnout, last names mattered. And I'm Roberto Alves. My last name is not Esposito. My last name is not an Italian last name that people may be familiar with in this town. While Boughton may not be an Italian last name, he was a 20-year mayor whose father happened to be a mayor as well. Danbury is a changing community, but it's a community that respects diversity of thought. And so I learned from that and made myself a little bit stronger of a candidate. You said so yourself. It was very close at the top. The bottom of the ticket was a little bit different. There's no one reason I think we lost that election or the bottom of the ticket lost. I think when it's that close, and even again, 19 was kind of reversed, right? The top of the ticket lost much bigger, and then the other parts of the ticket where I was on council, I had won, and nobody expected me to win, and I was the top vote getter for the Democrats at large. The Democrats at large, specific. I'm not saying it was the top vote getter. So it was reversed then from 21 to 19, but it was still pretty close, relatively. There was a bigger gap between mine and the bottom of the ticket there, but we made some noise. I felt that if turnout was just a little bit higher, we absolutely would have won. I think there was some national politics at play, a lot of things that were outside of our control, some things that maybe we could have done a little bit better. We're doing a lot of the same things from 21, just more of it. But again, I'll go back to that strength of the ticket. I think that matters. We had a lot of support that came on in 21, that came in maybe a little bit later in that campaign, that was there with us from the beginning. I don't have a campaign brochure here, but we can talk about our candidates. One that strikes everybody's attention, the old Danbury folks, is Sean Ratchford. That's been a huge name for us. Sean is a career special needs teacher at the high school for 30 years now. He's been coaching for 40 years. His father was a congressman. His mother was a teacher. Danbury knows him, and the fact that, Sean Ratchford, somebody at the other side has tried to get to run with them a long time, that when they saw his name come up, was getting phone calls. I can't believe you're doing this to us. Why are you running with them? And then he laid it out, and here he is with us every step of the way. And so many other folks on the ticket, Diane Lapine, Barry Rickert, who we're just excited to have. It's the strength of our ticket has really helped us and changed the direction of the messaging as well.
This is a different race because the last time it was an open seat race, but now you're running against somebody who has a 2-year record, so people have something to look back upon. So your strategy for running 2 years ago has to be somewhat different from now because you're running against somebody who has a record. So how are you changing your strategy?
A little bit of change, a lot of similarity, because in 2021, yes, it was an open seat, but my opponent he did everything he could to run as an incumbent. He talked about his time in leadership in the mayor's office. He was chief of staff for Mayor Cabo. He was chief of staff for Mark Bowen. He's been a leader in the city for X amount of years. And we said, okay, if you want to take the good, then if you're a leader then you have to take the criticism for the bad as well. You can't have it both ways. So we do talk about the current 2 years now, and what I see, the financial mismanagement in this city, the lost opportunities with many things. But then we also make a part of that his time before that, because in 21 he did try to run as an incumbent and he won successfully. So I don't, to me and to the people in Danbury, there's much more than just a 2-year record on him. There's a 8-year, 10-year record on Dean as well.
Danbury has exploded in terms of population. It was number 2 in terms of growth, second only to Stanford in the last census data. In many ways, Danbury, especially on the west side of Danbury, has expanded greatly. 2 years ago, we talked about the west side. What do you think about the west side? I want to re-examine that because there's a lot of issues happening on the west side. A lot of population over there. A lot of things are going to be needed over there. Fire, schools, police, that costs money. What are your thoughts about concerns on the west side, those items that I just brought up? Let's just talk about fire, for instance. Response time in the firehouse. You got people living over in the reserve. It'll take a little while from that truck to get over to the reserve. What are your thoughts about issues pertaining health and safety and development over there on the west side?
Well, let's answer that first question, fire. It's the same as 21. In 21, I openly stated we needed a substation or a station up on the west side. That was part of our plan. And while we have the bay over down at the airport, it's not enough. We need more services up there because that part of Danbury has exploded in population over the recent years. So that hasn't changed. I think we need that. And in terms of cost, I think it's very hard for you to go to folks in a community and have them go against the added cost when it comes to emergency services, whether it's police, fire, ambulance. Those are costs that are justified. Those are costs that people almost always get behind. And if not, we'll have a good answer to the folks as to why this is needed and what it would cost. The fire station, you bond that. The state would come in and help as well. And then the staffing, that'd probably be a little bit more direct, immediate cost. But again, it's hard for us to have a conversation with a resident and have them be against, hey, this is how long it takes to respond to your neighborhood or to any, and this is the benefit to you of us adding this fire station. So I'm not concerned with anybody being against that. I'm upset that we haven't had any movement yet going forward on that. We could have had that. This is no secret. The west side has been there. The development, the plans, that's no secret. The response time not being adequate, again, we know that already. Where are the plans? Where is the foresight? We shouldn't have to be doing this now. We could have done this before, and we know construction costs are more expensive now. So if we would have just done this years ago, it wouldn't be as expensive as it is to the community now.
So you see yourself, if you were into office, that's one of the things, would that be one of your priorities?
A lot of priorities. I think there's a lot of things that we've missed over the last 10 years, but certainly fire, rescue, emergency services are top of the list. So you have to. That's an injustice to our community if you don't address those right away and prioritize them.
One of the things that I talk about all the time, and actually I know that you walked with a group around the sidewalks. And you talked about sections of the city that sidewalks just disappear or are in disrepair. What are your thoughts about alternative means of transportation, whether it's improving pedestrian traffic, bike trails? I'm a big proponent of bikes. I'm a cyclist, and I think Danbury, it scares the hell out of me riding a bike around here.
Let's start with bike lanes. We've been pushing for bike lanes since the 21 election, and before that, I think it's, as a city, we should do better. We can do better to have dedicated bike lanes. Again, I'm a big proponent of transportation-oriented development, and I think if once we get that going down here, the folks that live in those kind of communities will also be the ones more inclined to ride too, but we got to think of other main roads as well. I think bike lanes is something that's easy to do and a cost-effective solution for our community where, yes, there's a little bit of cost, but there are grants. There are federal grants we can chase. We have them listed that can help us with that, so we're making a commitment to do that. Now, what's even more important to me than the bike lanes, because bikes can also be expensive, not everybody has the access to that, but we have a commitment to go forward, is sidewalks. Danbury is a city, and we should have it easy for folks to walk down the street, and then accessible too for folks that have handicaps to be able to walk. If you take right here, we're on Main Street. You take a right on our corner, right in front of the library, and then the crosswalk that goes over to Ive Street that goes to the rink from a parking lot, if you see where that crosswalk starts on this side of the road and the routes that are coming over, the curb, and I think anybody with a handicap, anybody with issues with mobility, a senior citizen, the folks we see walking down Main Street all the time, that is dangerous there for them. And that is something that's just easy for the city to do, to cut that section out, put a little ramp so they can cross. The other side of the street, that's done because they did those. That was done recently, but we're not working fast enough. This is just one little corner. When we are paving, we should be looking when we're looking at paving, sidewalks should be a part of that plan. So those costs are all encompassed. We can do that. We can do that reasonably. We can justify those costs again, so people can feel safe walking in their neighborhoods, strolling with their kids, walking, jogging, so kids can ride bikes and feel safe. I think as a community, it's our responsibility to do that. And then there's the health benefits of walking too, right? It's just added, and what it saves down the road by having an active community. But they can't do that if you don't have access to it, and then leads to another problem, right? This is like a domino effect. So if you don't have that, where are people walking? They're walking on the streets. And then you walk through any portion of Danbury, one of the biggest things we hear, concerns folks have, is lack of traffic enforcement, speeding. People don't feel safe walking in their neighborhoods. And because there's no sidewalks, they have to walk in the street. So we got to address both those challenges together.
Another alternative to me that I talked about a while back, and I don't see anybody talking about this, is that busing. It's been several years since the Peter Pan bus line has been gone, and there is no way that somebody who is low income can get on a bus and get out of Danbury. You can't get from Danbury to Waterbury. You can't get out of the city unless you have a car or unless you take the train. But if you want to take the bus, forget about it. And a lot of people did take the bus at one point in time. What are your thoughts about busing in this city, not necessarily in Danbury, but somebody get on the bus and get out of the city?
If we can make getting to other communities more accessible, it also ease another problem we have in Danbury, just traffic congestion. I am a proponent of all public transportation and investing in that and expanding those services. We talked about busing just now. I've been the one speaking up on the resource we do have with HART transportation, and we can be doing so much more with them, Al, but we're not. And I believe it's because of lack of leadership at the top from our city side. The HART board has a seat for every municipality in the area CEO. Our city CEO does not attend those meetings. Our city hasn't appointed somebody. We have an empty seat. I believe we have 2 seats now. I've talked to the leadership from HART, from labor, and other staff. I've made a commitment for me and the office to be represented there so we can advocate for these folks. Now, that only addresses the inner city and then some surrounding communities, but that's where we have to start somewhere. And when we show that success, then we can branch out. We have the Route 7 connector bus that people do ride. They take it down to the Merit 7 stop in Norwalk. We need to expand services like that. And I think the first community we really got to look at is Waterbury, because we have a lot of folks that commute from the valley that way down here for work. Because they find more affordable housing there. Another thing, like I said, right, everything is a domino. That's why we got to look at the approach from a 30,000-foot view and then the macro and the micro, correct? But with the busing, I'd be a proponent of that. And further to the public transportation, what I have talked about is trains. Again, we hear all the time, especially every 2 years, about the train to New York, where I've said, I am for that idea if it's feasible, if the cost is feasible to the community and it's not going to break our backs, and federal government, state governments will help when we actually have the final price. 100% for that. But we're not talking about the train to Stamford, the train to Norwalk, that train that goes to New Haven. That also takes congestion off our roads, because we have to make that line faster. That line is an opportunity for us, because we know that our friends in New Milford also want to expand New Milford to Danbury. I want to connect Danbury to New Milford. And then beyond that, New Milford to Great Barrington, Vermont, that's where the old line went, because now we can have Danbury as a center of commerce, people coming into Danbury, and our residents being able to go out as well, not only to commute, but for tourism opportunities.
I was good friends with former State Senator Tony Boucher, who's a big proponent of electrifying the lines. But the problem is that it costs a great amount of money to do that, and that will again increase taxes. So where do you find the balance between those two?
And that's a great line, the astronomical cost. We're talking about just Danbury, the Danbury line to Norwalk, electrifying that, which is, And how is the other side to New York not astronomical? So when folks tell me that, oh no, that's going to be affordable and this isn't, something doesn't jive. But we know that Danbury isn't the one that's going to pay for all that, because that's not how that works for this line. It wouldn't be just Tony Boucher's district either. It wouldn't be just Wilton paying for it. It'd be a collective. It'd be leaders getting together, lobbying the state government, the federal government. I absolutely have a plan to talk to my good friends, Congressman Hayes and Congresswoman Hayes and Congressman Himes, to get help from the federal government. And instead of sitting here bashing our Democratic leadership in the federal government and then bashing our Democratic leadership in the state that don't do enough, I want to work with them. And these are partners. These are people I talk to, I am friends with, who are eager to help. And this helps so many folks across it's going to help the 5th Congressional and the 4th Congressional, and they're going to be bought in, as well as the leaders from those communities, Carolyn Simmons in Stanford, the first selectman in Wilton, in Reading, everywhere. So with the collective group, and to do that, you need leadership at the top that's willing to see the opportunity and really roll their sleeves up and work and build this coalition to get this done. So I'm not overly concerned that that's going to put a cost on Danbury's taxpayers. I don't believe it is. I believe there's federal money we can chase for that. That's already there, and that's how I would address it. Again, the feasibility would have to be in the cost as well.
Okay, let's change gears a little quick. Let's talk about the downtown area, because it's something I always talk about with every single candidate since I've been starting in 2005. Downtown, we keep talking about it and talking about it. I've been talking about it since the mall opened up in 1986. So I'm going to be really specific on my questions here. Number one, the Palace Theater. I haven't heard anybody talk about the Palace Theater. In my opinion, you can't have a vibrant downtown without addressing the Palace Theater. Now, I think one of the negatives with the Eriquist administration that he never addressed the Palace Theater. He could have took it over by eminent domain. He could have put pressure on Joe DeSilva to do something, and instead he just sat there and let that place deteriorate. The Palace Theater, one section of the place has been open since, I don't know, let's say the 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. In other words, the restoration of the full Palace Theater, it's been at least 15 years since anything's been addressed there. What are your thoughts about the Palace Theater, and if you're elected, would you consider taking over the Palace Theater by eminent domain and to restore it in the same manner in which they did up in Waterbury?
It's beautiful in Waterbury.
And Waterbury got funding from John Rowland to restore it, and it's been a
And they did it without eminent domain.
They did it without it.
So it's possible, and again, back to that word, feasible. I think the right thing to do for any community is to work with property owners first, and you have a record, you have something to benchmark and show you how it can be done. They work with the government. They work, no secret, I'm friends with the governor, lieutenant governor, and we can show them that successful model in Waterbury. Anytime I talk about the Palace Theater with the voter, I talk about downtown, I take out my phone, I go to the Palace Theater Waterbury's website, and I show them. And I go, these are the same architects, original. The bones there, this is what we can have in Danbury. And how do we do that? Well, we need to be bought in. We need to have approaches with state government and Danbury as well. This is going to take twofold, right? Danbury's going to have to pony up a little bit. But when you see the kind of culture, the arts, the visual theater you can bring and what it can do to a downtown, we can sell that. People are going to be bought in. You don't have to go down the road to Richfield, to go to Richfield Pie House to watch a premiere show when you can do it down here. We're the region city. We should be the draw, just like Waterbury is for their region there. And they have the proven track record of success. We should work with their administrations there to follow their model for what they've done with the Palace Theater. I am all in. I have had conversations with the landlord down here. He knows downtown is my priority. I just want to touch on your question. You've been talking about downtown since 2005, Al. Every 2 years, we talk about downtown. We talk about downtown every 2 years because we haven't seen the progress. We haven't seen we hear the rhetoric, we hear the talk, but every 2 years it's the same thing. And every 2 years, the faces may have changed, but the leaders have been the same. The administration that's in charge, the people pulling the strings, the people deciding the direction, the future of the city, it's all the same school of thought. It's all the same approach. And every 2 years, here we are. And I promise you, then 2 years from now, if we don't win, you're going to be asking the same question to the next two candidates. But what I'm saying is, in 2 years, when we win, the questions are going to be different. It's going to be like, I see the progress downtown. I see that you have these communications because you haven't put them out. You have put them on they're on city websites. The plans are there. We can track where you are and where you're going, what you've done based on your plans. So you'll be able to hold me accountable.
there has been some efforts to revitalize downtown. One of the things that was done under the Boughton administration was to give tax breaks to residential developers, 7-year tax breaks. You said 2 years ago that you would support Crosby Street, and you would have supported Kennedy Flats. You wouldn't have supported the News Times.
Not without more negotiation and a little bit more out of it.
And I remember in 2019, I was at a press conference with Chris Sotero right out there at Kennedy Park. And you look right across the street, and there was a Subway shop. That was when I moved here in '87. That's the first place I had a meal was at that Subway shop. Subway shop's been there forever. The place is not there anymore. And it's right in between Crosby Street and Kennedy Flats. And one of the things that the administration said at the time is that, hey, we're going to give these tax breaks to the residential developers because it will increase pedestrian traffic. That never happened. But you said you would support that. Now, you would have supported that.
And I still stand by that. I would have supported the Crosby and Kennedy Flats, and I would have negotiated for more on the News Times property.
Isn't it fair to say that we haven't seen anything from those two developments in terms of pedestrian traffic? So wasn't that a bust for taxpayers because we lost a lot of money in terms of millions of dollars? Crosby Street itself, the developer changed the mindset of that, turned it into a dormitory for a couple of years. So how did residents benefit from that? Because downtown's still the same way.
Well, I agree. I think the perception is accurate. We don't get the foot traffic. The only place you see the folks from those places are Mothership right now, right? We go to Mothership for lunch right now, you're going to see people that you don't see anywhere else on Main Street. If you go there for breakfast on a Sunday or a Saturday, like, oh my God, where are these people at, Empire of the Incas, which is a great establishment. So the people are there. I was skeptical. About the Kennedy Flats project. And I'm honest with everybody on that. And I was wrong. People are there. People are living there. We just need to get them out. So the project worked. Well, we have to incentivize development, and we have to start locally downtown. I think, listen, I'm not going to get into the politics of this. I think the Hat City Ale House needs to be open. I think that's going to attract a different kind of demographic downtown. That's one thing. I think we got to, again, back to the negotiations on that third project, the possible 700,000 plus that we missed a year. Well, maybe we go halfway and then we commit, or we have the developers commit to loans to help, other businesses and restaurants open. We need to do more to promote. We can, have those monies going to business owners downtown to help attract those residents here. I think one thing that the city could do is go in to a lot of these residents and help them with, simple as this, right? I speak 3 languages. I can only imagine the frustration for some folks when they go into a restaurant and they can't, and the typos, and you can't even read through a menu. That is not very welcoming. Have the city come out and help restaurants translate menus, and then perhaps help them attract talent for work that can communicate with everybody as well to make places more welcoming. Help promote them in a sensible way to the residents that live there to do more community activities that get those folks that are using Danbury as a bedroom community. They're going to work, they're coming home, and then they're going out. Where are they going? They're going to Richfield, they're driving out to West Hartford. I go to West Hartford every once in a while on my way out from Hartford, and I see tons of folks from Danbury. I go, well, why aren't you here? Why aren't you doing this in Danbury? They're like, Roberto, look around. I can walk from this restaurant for a drink, go to this one for dinner, and then go to this one for after dinner drink, and then come home.
I think the biggest thing that we have to talk about, if you want people downtown, you got to bring jobs downtown. Jobs downtown. I know you talked about the old Meebies, how people had a happy hour back in those days. Well, that's because there was jobs downtown at that time. What are you going to do in terms of bringing jobs downtown? If you agree that that's a component, then what are you doing to bring jobs downtown? Because again, look, Danbury, in terms of the mill rate, in terms of taxes, in terms of other cities, especially on the mill rate, it's pretty damn low. And it is an attractive place for commercial development. It always has been. What are you going to do to bring those businesses to say, hey, look, don't put up businesses on the west side, bring it back downtown?
Well, it's got to be twofold. I don't think we want to discourage businesses from going anywhere in the community. I think what we got to do is poach businesses from other towns. We go back to transportation-oriented development we talked about earlier. I think we can attract key talent from the Norwalk, Stanford area once we get that line faster, and we get the more residential as well down there, apartments, people who are going to stay off our road, and you incentivize. We need some kind of hub here. And again, I talked about things being a domino effect. We got to look at it holistically. I'd love to see some kind of, Danbury being some kind of tech hub for the state, working with Westcon. And I spoke to Dr. Singh about this. Connecticut is hurting for a Polytech Institute. when you look at communities that do really well, they have strong they have strong college ties. UConn and Stanford grew at the same time as Stanford grew. That is a drawdown there. You look at all the colleges in New Haven. So we got to partner strong with Western. I really want to lobby the state to make sure they fund WestConn, and in fact, more so, and invest and create a Polytech Institute there. And now we can incentivize smaller tech companies. We had a friend of mine, John Soros, who had a successful organization here. Well, he moved out of the state. The guys who work are still here. Those are the kind of folks we need downtown as well, right? And we can incentivize that because there's an opportunity there. And I agree with you. One thing that I thought I'd see already that was going to be done downtown was the old Feinson's building with Savings Bank of Danbury, where they're going to add more jobs, have more folks there. Time will tell what the salaries are like. And again, you mentioned, I talked about the happy hour. We need the folks that have the income to be able to stop to get a cup of coffee in the morning, go out for lunch, stop at happy hour. That building isn't built yet. It's been 2 years. I don't know. I haven't talked to the CEO of the bank, but based on what I'm hearing from City Hall, my assumption is they're hitting a wall when it comes to permits. Things are getting really delayed. I just saw the other day, guys waiting months and months for a septic permit that he's ready to go on, but he just hasn't been hearing from the city. So we got to make city government more efficient and effective so folks do want to come and invest in our town so we can grow, then we can have that kind of folks with money downtown as well. I agree with you.
Education, okay? You have made several comments in regards to education, and I just want to start by saying the $150 million, you're saying that the mayor underfunded education. Let's start with that first, all right? The $150 million, that came from the Board of Education towards the City Council. That was approved by the Board of Ed, all right? So do you have confidence in the superintendent of schools and the head of finance for the Board of Ed? Because those are the people who originally drafted the $150 million budget to present that was approved by...
I think their hands are tied.
That was approved by the Board of Education. That includes Democrats on the Board of Education who's running for re-election right now. And that was given to the City Council. So the origins of this $150 million came from the Board of Ed. But you're blaming the mayor for this, but it's from the superintendent.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to do?
Very fair.
Why?
Very fair, because the mayor said that he was going to work with the Board of Education to work in 21 when we ran, that he was going to start the process early. He was going to work with the Board of Education to fund these things, and and he's going to be a part of the conversation every step of the way. I believe that the Board of Education requested a sum that they knew that they were going to get because they knew that's what they were going to get, and didn't ask for more. For whatever reason. That's a gut feeling now. Because we go to January 19th, and I believe it's 19th, apologize if I'm wrong, but it's January 2023, the Board of Education workshop that historically private citizens, parents, community members could ask questions. We were not allowed to ask questions this time, right? Which was real funny to me. They presented their workshop. I was there, Councilman Joe Britton, Councilman at the time Santos, State Rep Santos, many other members of the public, the mayor, his chief of staff, his former campaign manager, who's, I'm not sure what his position is now. They were all there. And these are quotes that are in the budget presentation. The finance director said, well, we're actually around $12 million short. They presented the $4 million in cost savings and efficiencies that they found that got them to that $150 million. But when presented with questions on that yes, I had a hand in asking those questions because I couldn't ask them, so I pointed it out to somebody, and they asked, well, what are those cost savings and efficiencies? And they tell us they're unfilled positions. Well, it's not a savings, they're an efficiency because you got to fill them eventually. And that's what they're saying then. And when asked if this plan is sustainable, and they say no, and the mayor is right there, he saw that. Now, devil's advocate, right? Let me do the same thing. You do devil's advocate. The Board of Education presented that. The Board of Education members passed it. I think the Board of Education members, at least the Democratic ones, Al, are absolutely exhausted with the last 15 years of school budgets. And they know that even if they ask for $152 million and they're told they're only going to get $150 million or $154 million, but they know they're going to get $150 million, they're just exhausted with this fight. They're exhausted.
Wait,
But the mayor saw it. No, because I'm running against the mayor. I'm not running against the superintendent. The mayor saw that. The mayor saw that, and he could have stood up and said something.
The superintendent makes $259,000 a year, and that's a separate form of government. The education side of the budget is a separate form of government. It's completely separate. The Board of Ed, it's like the city council. The city council's only job is to allocate money and give it to the Board of Ed. They have a finance department, and the superintendent of schools runs the schools.
But if you're going to look at me with a straight face right now and say that the mayor doesn't run this whole city and doesn't have his hands, or the mayor's office over the last 15 years don't have their hands in every department's budget, I'm going to laugh a little bit, Al, because you know better. You know that. You've reported on these things. You see what's going on. And yes, the superintendent has a competitive salary based on superintendents in the region. I think that's fair to say, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
His competitive salary. Because if you don't give
they're-
superintendents a competitive salary, you're not going to get the talent you need. Do I have confidence in our superintendent still? I think he has his hands tied. I think he's in a hard place. I think he's digging out of a 20-year hole, just like I will be digging out of a 20-year hole as mayor. And you have to do what you can and work for everybody. Yes, I still have confidence because, again, I think folks' hands are tied, and either they're afraid to speak up against the city, or they just knew they weren't going to get anywhere, and if they didn't ask for a certain amount, maybe they would have gotten less. I don't know that. Maybe you could do an interview with the superintendent.
Yeah, I think I should because, again, they're responsible for closing the schools, opening schools. They're involved. They're responsible for hiring teachers, firing teachers, and it's not the mayor. But you accuse the mayor of closing schools. You accuse the mayor of cutting programs. But that's that's under the umbrella of the superintendent of schools. That's a completely separate form of government. The mayor doesn't have any say-so on what schools are being opened and closed. In fact, there was one time back during the Biden administration that the Board of Ed asked for $500,000 for books, I think. They gave them the money. They used it for something else.
That's a problem. But here we go again,
But
right? The mayor's going to take credit for all the good. If it's the opening in schools, it's all the good. There he is. I was the leader. I made this happen. But if it's the bad, oh, it's not him. It's a separate form of government. That's not fair, and people see through that too.
We have the charters, the Career Academy that's going to be opening up pretty soon.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's Irving Fox. He did a very good presentation on this several times. I've talked to him several times about this. There is a fiscal cliff that's going to be coming up because
scary.
It's one thing to do the school, but you have to
fund it.
You got to staff it. You got to do all that stuff.
As we look forward, we have the slide on the cliff. We talked about this cliff last year. The graphs that we were just looking at showed, should nothing else change, 2 years from now, the city's share of this is expected to be $35 million higher than it is now with the $9 million increase this year, right? That's an astronomical increase with no discussion on how that's to be funded. So I raised this issue last year, and my suggestion was that we have all the stakeholders come in and talk about, because that's not going to happen during this cycle, right? So it was 2 or 3 years out last year. Now it's 1 to 2 years out. We're sitting here with a $35 million, and I won't even call it a cliff. It's going to be needed. The voters approved the bonding for the new school, and I said at the time, the voters approved that. They're also kind of indirectly approving an operational budget increase, right? For the voters to vote for the school and not for what goes in it would be ridiculous, right? So there's some expectation on the part of the town, the city, the taxpayers. We're going to have to pay more in the long run. But there is no plan now, nor does it look like anyone's talked about how we're going to raise $35 million. And the way it's presented in this slide is city funding $35 million more. If you break that down to whatever the mill rate has to be to achieve that, and our finance director can tell us what $35 million means, that's going to result in a tax bill for the average taxpayer that's thousands of dollars more than exists today. I don't know how to justify that sitting here. I know the money is needed. I know every penny could be used. I'm fully appreciative and supportive of the school system. I'm the son of a teacher. I'm the father of a teacher and an aspiring teacher. I've been on that side of the table and on this side. I've been every which way. But I don't know how I can sit here and justify $35 million or how people are going to pay for that.
You've talked about keeping taxes down as much as possible. How is that realistic when you have a fiscal cliff coming up very soon, for the next 2 to 3 years? I think he said 30 million for one time, and it's going to keep going on after that.
I believe the number for the school started at 9 million, now it's at 12.
Taxes are going to start hitting people exponentially. How are you going to handle hiring new police officers, hiring new teachers, paving roads? And we know how much it costs for a quarter mile of road to pave. how can you say you're going to do all these things and how can you do all these things and keep taxes low while we have a career academy that's it's going to be a small Band-Aid on our whole problem?
I'm glad you said
So
that,
how are we
because I
going
agree with you on
to
that.
handle all that
Yeah.
while saying we're going to try to keep taxes low? Aren't taxes just, you have no choice but to put taxes going to have to go up. Most taxes in terms of education goes towards health care,
Right.
the teachers and unions that are just, you can't do anything about that. So aren't taxes just, you have no
Contractual,
choice.
right,
You have no
contractual
choice
things.
you have no choice but to raise
Yeah, but
taxes.
keeping taxes low isn't just about, hey, the city, it costs arbitrary numbers, right? It costs $1,000 to run the city this year, and this is what we're going to raise for. We're not going to have any frivolous spending. And next year, it costs $1,500 to run the city. We're not going to raise taxes to $1,800 and find other projects. That's not keeping taxes low. But if the city costs $1,500 to run, keeping it at $1,500 and not having frivolous spending, that's keeping taxes low, and that's where our commitment is. So if we talked about the fire station on the west side. Yes, that would have an increase in taxes, but that's responsible taxes. That's not me funding projects that we don't need. So keeping taxes low based on where your budget needs are is fair. You know what's not going to keep taxes low are the amounts of lawsuits the city's settling. The Party Depot lawsuit, we don't know what that's going to affect our taxes yet, because the judgment said the city of Danbury acted recklessly. And based on the experts I've talked to, that word right there, recklessly, might cost the taxpayers, because insurance might not cover it.
Are those lawsuits covered by insurance,
That's what I
though?
was just talking about. The reckless.
But again,
No, they're not. We don't know that, because the $17 million we lost to Party Depot right now, because the judgment said the city of Danbury acted recklessly, insurance might not cover it. This isn't, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert, so I talked to lawyers, former city attorneys, who said, and I asked them, does insurance cover this? They go, Roberto, I don't think so, because of the word reckless. So no, we don't know what covers that, Al. And then if we talk about the $5 million that they lost to the mall, insurance doesn't cover that. $2.5 million of that looks like it came out of the ARPA funds. I challenge you to go to look at the ARPA funds, look at the $2.5 million line item that doesn't say because of a lost lawsuit, but it says lost revenue to the general budget. Very creative way to slip that in there.
The Career Academy, that's going to be tens of millions of dollars, and that's just a small Band-Aid. We need more schools on the west side. I'm sure you want to talk about more schools that we need on the west side. I'm sorry we couldn't get to my question here from the viewer, but I would just basically say, she said, hey, schools are blowing up by the seams. We need more schools. All right, and we need more teachers. The teacher to student ratio is astronomical. All those things, everything is going to cost a lot of money. How are you going to handle all that if mayor and try to keep the taxes low? Because we have no choice. It's going to have to explode in a matter.
Everybody is bought in because we're a community, right? And when we make our plans, we want to show folks what these costs are before we present budgets. We want to work with everybody. So if we feel, and I feel, that we need more schools, then this is what the school is going to cost. This is what we expect to get from Hartford. This is how much it's going to cost to operate. That's the conversation we're not having publicly right now. I commend Councilman Irving Fox. He's always been a champion of this. He has talked about that, right? And this is across the aisle, somebody who has, spoken up against his party in education a few times, because it's not fair to the public to not tell them what these costs are when we sell them on a bonding initiative for the project. Like, oh, don't worry, the state's giving us 85%, but then we don't tell them about the $9 or $12 million that's coming in the future. So it's only fair to the public, and we have a commitment and a promise to do that, Al, that if, say, Roberto Alves and his team want to open up another middle school, the middle school is going to cost $60 million to build. 85% of that's going to come, this is arbitrary numbers, is going to come from the state government. But what I'm going to also do with that, and we're going to put it out there, is show them what that impact is going to be to you for the next 5, 7, 9 years. Because you have to be on board with that.
So how many more schools do you think we need?
I think we need a middle school.
Let's go elementary, secondary, and high school. What do you think?
So let's start with the Career Academy. I think the Career Academy is a good idea, but I believe that the right thing for that to have been be one campus.
Okay.
Right, for either a high school or a middle school.
Okay.
We need another middle school desperately in town, and we likely need another elementary school. On the elementary school side, though, we have so many buildings, we really have to assess the life, how much more the life those buildings have. Think about how old some of our elementary schools are.
Right.
We have property. We're a city. We don't need to look at many other places. We can build up. right?
Yep.
There's opportunity there in some of our elementary schools to add on, and now with temporary spaces like we've done with other schools like Shelter Rock, that we have temporary classrooms that are outliving their shelf lives, but actually either see get engineers in there to see can the buildings sustain other floors, what the property is to put other buildings, so it can be a cheaper cost to us. The capital expenditure side, there will be additional costs on the staff, and I acknowledge that. But we wouldn't move forward unless the community's bought in, right? We don't have to send that to a referendum vote, but there's other ways to do that with public hearings. How about town halls hosted by the mayor that present his ideas at we have 7 wards, 7 elementary schools or middle schools, we have a school per ward, where I commit to sitting there with the folks of that neighborhood. So they don't have to come to City Hall, we go to them, so then we can lay out our plans transparently. This is what we need. I make the pitch. I make the pitch for the community, I make the pitch for us, for our taxpayers, on why I think this is important. And then they tell us, we have tables there, we have listening sessions, we listen to their feedback, we see if the community is with us, and we explain to them why this is responsible use of our money. While we are keeping taxes low, funding what we need, I'm not working on frivolous projects. And then we see if the community is actually behind us for us to move forward with the projects or not, because the community has to be bought in now.
I think, I think we gotta wrap it up real quick. I think we have a lot more things we talk about, because Danbury is a community, we're talking about Danbury that is still the same, in many ways, the same Danbury from 30 years ago, but we have a lot more residents in here and it's still exploding. I think we'll be at 100,000 within the next decade. And that's gonna involve a lot more spending to keep up with the times. And I think it's gonna be a very incredibly difficult situation for the next.
But the community has to be bought into the spending, and that's what I'm saying. It can't be a surprise to them. You can't go in there and raise taxes overnight without giving them the decency of having that conversation with them to let them know what's happening. That's why I commit to hosting town halls as mayor, having our team go out there to the people in each one of the wards so they can come to us. We can explain to them our plans, how things are working, and how they can be a part of helping.
7 days ago, give you the last pitch. 1 week ago, why should the voter undecided with 7 days ago vote for you?
Listen, in 30 seconds, if you're tired of hearing the same questions every 2 years like you've had for the last 50, like since 2001, then it's time to vote for progress. It's time to buy into our campaign and all the good things we're doing. We're going to keep taxes low, but most importantly, we're going to, like our campaign, we're going to be honest when we're in office, and we're going to be transparent. We're going to come to you. We're going to come to make it easier for you to come to us to let us know how you feel by going to your ward, hosting meetings where you can come and talk to our team directly, get answers on the record. Right now, you go to City Hall, if you want to speak, you speak on record, but you don't have your question answered. We're going to have listening sessions that actually have Q&A recorded, so that way you can hold us accountable to what we said.
All right, look, Roberto, really good to see you again.
See you too.
I've been watching you since, 2017, since you first came on the scene?
Yeah, I mean, as a volunteer before that, but 2017.
Yeah, you worked very well. I'm very proud of all your efforts, and best of luck to you. And I can't wait for Election Day, because I'm ready for this thing to be over with and ready for Thanksgiving.
I appreciate it. Well, you're a voter, so hopefully you're looking at all the facts here. And,
yeah, I'm looking at it all, and I'll speak my mind later on about that. But people, I just want you to know, no matter where you stand at on the issues, the most important thing to do is to vote, because if you don't vote, you can't be bitching around here. You gotta vote.